Good morning. I'm Angela Crowley here on my platform, Neuroplasticity in Action, where I offer movement courses to help facilitate neuroplasticity, expanding human potential. And it's my great pleasure today to welcome Cynthia Allen, who has over 35 years experience, both as a practitioner, an educator, a manager, and an organizer, who has brought the work to the public in the form of the Feldenkrais Summit, which has brought thousands and thousands of people. When I was a guest on your program, I think you had 28,000 people attend. And since then, what have your numbers been?
They've been around 28,000 up to 30. Yeah, it's
And
very similar.
it's amazing, absolutely an amazing accomplishment. So you and I share a passion of using movement to facilitate possibility.
Mhm.
And you and I also share a passion in spreading the tools to do so via the platforms we've created. And it's quite amazing, really, that one approach to movement can help everyone improve and enjoy life better, from an Olympic athlete to an elder seeking ease in everyday movement, to someone in pain, to someone wanting to sleep better, to someone who just wants to learn a new hobby. So, how in the world is it possible that one system can do all of that?
Well, first I want to say, Angela, I love the title of your podcast, Neuroplasticity in Action. And I
Thank
think
you.
that to some degree, the answer is encapsulated in that title because when we really understand neuroplasticity, we understand how something like the Feldenkrais method works. So somatic education, so programs like the Feldenkrais method that you and I hold in common, as well as then I do Bones for Life, and then there are other fields, right? Body, mind centering, and et cetera. It's a beautiful field, and I really want to point this out because there's so many things coming out right now calling themselves somatic workouts, somatic exercise, somatic this, somatic
Thank
that,
you.
and that is not actually what inspired it. What inspired it was the field of somatic education. And now people are just taking just a little bit of soft language and attending to the body and adding it to other things. And that's actually not bad. It's wonderful, but it's not somatic education. So,
Exactly.
it's not right. And so, what is that special something is your question, right? In the Feldenkrais method that allows it to be so available to help people almost regardless of their challenge or hopes or dreams or activity level. And it really
Yes.
is centered in your title, neuroplasticity in action, because neuroplasticity is an active process. And the things that we do, we get better at doing, including really deep seated habits, compensatory habits sometimes, habits that came out of survival or trauma, habits that come with trying to protect ourselves from pain, habits that come from being a high end athlete and trying to make something happen. And we often only think about the positive side of neuroplasticity, like probably when you were naming it, like most of us, me included, when I use it, I'm thinking about the positive side of it. But neuroplasticity will wire in whatever it is you're doing that it identifies with your ability to, quote, survive.
Including, for example, tension in the shoulders, holding our breath, um, walking with a limp that we happen to have learned decades ago from a sprained ankle that's led to back pain, etc.
That's right. So when we look at the Feldenkrais method, we look at it trying, although the word neuroplasticity didn't exist then, and I don't know if Moshe Feldenkrais would have something different to say about it if he were alive today than what I'm going to say, but I think what I'm saying is pretty on target. With his would be his thinking. I'm guessing, of course, but The nervous system. So we've got this brain and this central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, particularly the nervous system, the central nervous system is really monitoring our ability to survive. And it will always be asking this one question in this moment. It's only about survival in this moment, by the way. That's all it's asking itself. Am I okay now? Am I okay now? Am I okay now? It is not able to think about 20 minutes from now. It's not able to think about 2 hours or 20 years or 40 years from now. It only thinks about now. And it's looking at your respiration and your body temperature and what's comfortable, uncomfortable, and anything that strikes it as, right? Anything that makes the person hold their breath, go a little bit, it will respond to immediately with a whole bunch of alarm systems and then some ratcheting down. So that's where that tension that you're talking about comes in, because we have habits of how we deal with stress, right?
Yes.
I got mine. You got yours, right?
Yes, that's for sure. That's for sure. Who doesn't, right?
Yeah. And so what the Feldenkrais method does is say, hey, let's help this person feel and be incredibly safe at a level of safety that they have never, ever experienced before, perhaps. Maybe the last time they had it was in the womb, and maybe not even then. And so we're taking the person to this deep level of safety, which means that the nervous system can open up, release the fear.
Them. Yes. It can receive new messages.
That's
and
right.
It can discern pleasure again. And it can discern joy and movement and efficiency. And then as we build those new patterns of comfort, of joy, of efficiency into people, they carry on into their worlds. So it's not like a quick fix or something that just ends at the end of a lesson. It grows in the brain. So those habits have grown over time through repetition. And our nervous systems can be trusted to take care of us, right? They're there to take care of us. So when providing a pleasurable, enjoyable sense of living, of breathing, of moving, we can trust our nervous system will want to embrace that, will recognize it, and will want to embody it further.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say that the nervous system wants to upgrade.
Yes.
When presented with a chance to upgrade and function at a higher level, it will start to try to make that choice. Now, there is this other thing that has been grooved into the lightning fast patterns and habits of, for me, 65 years. And so it's not usually, although it does happen sometimes, it's not usually that the change is permanent without any reinforcement. This is why awareness of what we do becomes so important. So I had a series of Feldenkrais functional integration lessons last year with the fabulous Paul Rubin out of San Francisco. And he helped me feel I don't know that this was his intention, but it might have been, but he helped me feel something that I do in my right shoulder blade for years. Right shoulder blade, right scap, upper right side of my back. And I could then feel myself coming into it and going out of it, and coming into it and going out of it. I could ask myself, I could go, oh, there's that thing I do. There's the not thing. There's the letting go of it.
You begin to gain ownership of that.
Yeah.
And then choice about that. Whereas otherwise it was just happening subconsciously, really, perhaps sometimes annoying you. And these sorts of things, you said something earlier about our nervous system isn't thinking about the future. Neither is it thinking about which muscles to contract. Which is where it fits into my profession as a movement exercise teacher. Because we often approach training movement through thought, right? Do this, do that, contract this muscle, be in this form. And it's really from the outside in. And like you said, those patterns of organization from the commander in chief, our nervous system, are happening at lightning speed. It's too late by the time the instruction has been heard or thought about, right?
That's right.
Because those patterns, like you said, they're lightning speed, right? So in order to find new options, we need to get off the highway and slow down to where we're more like on a route of walking through a street where we can sense and see things and be aware of what's going on around us, but within ourselves, within our bodies, instead of just being on automatic fast track, right? In
Absolutely.
order to gain an experience, we need to slow down. And like you said, we need to create safety. We need to lighten the load on ourselves to be able to sense subtleties.
Yes, it's just so important. So what happens inadvertently in most approaches to physical fitness, physical health, and I will also put most of rehab in this, occupational therapy,
Absolutely.
physical therapy as well, because really physical therapy came out of a fitness program way, way back when from Germany. You know, it has its roots in fitness and often borrows things from yoga or Pilates, or they kind of pull all these things in where
Yes.
an emphasis is put on particular form, muscle, end range of movement. I want to talk about that with you. Um, so what happens is, as what you said, it's so fast that the person layers on muscular contraction. No, contract your quad right here. You contract your quad right here. They layer on muscular contraction on top of the
Yes.
old bad habit.
Yes.
And when you
Yes.
layer
Yes.
on top of the old bad
Yes.
habit, what do you get? More,
Exactly. Exactly.
stronger of the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That's right. Um, So I have been privileged as an exercise instructor to be extremely successful around the world in both Pilates and gyrotonic and in body work. But I feel my success has a secret inside of it, which is the understanding I've learned through the Feldenkrais method, so that I'm really not intending to tell people what muscles to contract. I'm helping them have an experience where they are learning to sense themselves because none of us are the same. So, how can we possibly give one instruction to a group of people to create an exercise or running, for example, or whatever the activity may be, when each person is completely different? I mean, each person learned to crawl, learn to walk in their own individual way. They have their own history of injuries, of habits, of patterns that have made them a completely uniquely wired, if you will, individual. And so if I approach them all the same way, how can it work for anyone? It there's another way, which is to help each person sense themselves, provide that safe environment for them, and create variation and let them learn their own best way, similar to how babies learn to walk through experimentation, right? So the babies have to experiment. If they put their foot this way or that way, they tumble over until they find the line of force. Well, we can do the same thing teaching an exercise class, right? Try this way with your foot, add variability to it, add varying patterns, and trust that the nervous system, in seeking its own well-being for the person, will find the best path for that individual. And because the individual has had the chance to discover it, they will own it. And it's so much more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think, one of the challenges that I perceive as a participant sometimes in exercise classes, although I can talk about that a little bit. I find that most of them just aren't really safe for me. And but what I see is that, you've got a body of work to communicate in a group class. And so that body of work is what's going to take precedence. Whatever the body of work is going to take precedence. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
how do you feel like you've been able to create a group and experience that is more safe for, let's say, Pilates or for gyrotonics? Oh, I guess you don't do gyrotonics in groups that much, do
No,
you?
we do sometimes. Yeah, we do group sessions in the gyrotonic system. I prefer to focus on individualized sessions, but the point is the same because I could teach according to an exercise curriculum or I could teach individuals. And it's that paradigm shift that I'm after sharing with others in the educational courses I'm presenting. So it's instead of teaching through instruction, it's inviting exploration. So I can take that same series of movements, and just as we do when we're teaching Feldenkrais, I can have each person become aware of of themselves, their contact with the machine, their contact with their foot, their breathing pattern. I can be talking about those things to an entire group, and each person's experience will be different. And then within the curriculum of exercises, if I provide enough variability, each person will have a chance to find their best way. So if I let them first discover what they're doing instead of first correcting them, like most people walk into all too often into a workout facility or a physical therapy facility and they learn what's wrong with them. And what I believe is that whatever they're doing is brilliant because it's helping them survive, right? So I embrace what they're doing and help them feel what they're doing. So before I even want them to do something different, I want them to feel what they're doing. So notice where you placed your foot. When you push on that part of your foot, feel what happens through your pelvis. Now go to a different part of your foot. Or if the shoulders are tense, for example, right? I can say relax your shoulders all day long, but no one's tightening their shoulders to spite themselves, you know? So they're tightening their shoulders for a reason. So it's like, okay, tighten your shoulders and feel what that does to your breathing. Or I can support the tight shoulders with cushions so that they can finally begin to let go. So that I give them an environment that allows them to have another option. And they get to keep discovering more and more. So first I will have them exaggerate their pattern so they can feel what they're doing. It's kind of like on the map. If you're on a map, to find where you're going, you have to know where you are. It's like where it says on the map, you are here now. It's like people need to know that in their body before they're going to go someplace else in their body. So it's first helping them feel what they're doing, exaggerate even what they're doing because they've been doing it unconsciously, right? It's just become a habit, as you said. So emphasizing, having them exaggerate the pattern that they do so they begin to recognize it in a safe environment. So that might mean that I use less tension or more support or put them in a different relationship with gravity so that they are safe. But first and foremost, we have to address if they're in that fight or flight mode, right? Because if someone it has so much pain that they're not going to be able to hear my suggestions of how they could move differently, right? It's like first we have to get them comfortable, right? And bring them into an experience of comfort. So if someone's in pain, I'm not going to be pounding on them a new technique. No, I'm going to be helping them, their nervous system, through tools such as breathing, using the eyes, using the mouth, using those parts of our nervous system that reach most deeply into the core of our nervous system to tell it it's okay. And once they begin to be able to relax, they begin to be able to hear me. And then it's my job to only accelerate my pace of giving them new information at the rate that they can stay relaxed and have a pleasant experience. Because if it's pleasant, their body's going to embrace it. And it sounds like a slower process, but it's much faster, actually. It's a much faster way to get there, curiously enough.
Well, I want to back up to something that you said, which I think is just so key, is that you are seeing the brilliance of what a person is doing habitually, not judging it, not saying it might be that you look at it and you go, oh, that's not as efficient as if they were able to do this. But there's a difference between that and this kind of judging that goes on in a lot of the professions. It's
Yes.
shame-based. It's actually like shame-based, because then I have those people come to me, yoga teachers, Pilates teachers, weight trainers, and they're ashamed, right, of what they are having
They're
struggling
almost
with.
apologizing walking in the
They're
door.
apologizing, right, because they
Right.
are human. And so this is so, I mean, this is so important. And of course, I don't know what drove you to the Feldenkrais method, but for me, I was someone who had a lot of significant childhood movement coordination issues, pain, trauma, and really I could not participate in normal physical education. And even as an adult, I would try, I would try jazzercise at the time, if that was a big thing, or I would try this or would try that. I would try physical therapy, and I just always got hurt. And what I mean by getting hurt, I don't mean by something gets a little aggravated and then it goes away in a day or two or a week. I'm talking about something happens that then takes me down for 6 months or a year. So I'm like, oh, this is so hard. This is just so difficult.
And yet you had such good intention walking in the door.
You do, and you so want it to work.
Right.
As a young woman, I so wanted it to work. And really, I so want that to work now when I go in a door. But I'm so cautious now because the fields just don't have the observation skills. They don't know really how to observe what you're talking about. They don't know how to take the time to listen, to bring people to that place of safety, and then how to chunk something down in a way that the person can take it in without injuring themselves. And you cannot count, even on a Feldenkrais practitioner, you cannot count on a person who has a lot of vulnerabilities in their system, areas which don't stack as well, maybe go beyond in-range movement easily, or somebody in pain often can't feel what's really happening because the pain messages are so
Strong. Yes.
So what happens is that they're thinking, well, the person is going to tell me. They may have said, tell me if something hurts. If you're lucky, they told you that. Let's just face it. If you're
But some
lucky,
people aren't that in tune, and they have never been invited to express it, even if they are.
right? So
That's an educational process in and of itself to
it
help people
is.
become in touch. And when have we been given permission to say that's a little much for me, or we've been taught to try harder to succeed.
Yes, but Angela, I would say, when would that practitioner ever say, they'd see what the person did, and then when would they ever say, let's do half that amount, let's do 1/4 that amount, let's do 1/8 that amount. Tell me in that range which one feels the best to you.
Yes, I love
Instead, the
that.
push is
I
for
love that.
more. It's for more.
And when they push over like that range in which, if it's an eighth, let's say, that feels really right, that's where the gold is, right?
So where they
And
go.
it's like the more familiar they get with that, the faster we're going to find a new route instead of those old habits that are damaging. But we need to embrace that little
Little
eighth.
that
Embrace that little eighth and let them embrace it. And don't let them know that that's enough, that that's exactly where we want to be today. I'm so happy that it feels good for you. This is exactly what I'm after. Like to have that encouraged, to have that celebrated instead of, well, that's good. Now go more, you
always
know?
ratcheting it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, the Feldenkrais principle, and the one we use also a lot in Bones for Life, which is to, go small, go with what's easy. We don't go frequently, we don't go to the area that's injured, right?
Exactly,
We don't
exactly.
immediately, because why? Well, because we know it's a system. It's a biological breathing, changing cellular action happening system.
Yes. So one of my favorite teachers, Miriam from France, I remember her once saying that people are like cauliflowers. If you look at the whole cauliflower, it looks like a cauliflower. If you pull off one piece, it's still a cauliflower. So the nervous system is throughout the whole person. So you don't have to hammer at the place that has pain to create the change. You're actually better to go someplace else where they can feel some comfort, where they
Mhm.
feel safe, where it feels inviting, where they can become familiar again with comfort. And then let that comfort attract more and more of themselves. And then pretty soon that pain is quieted down.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like if you said okay with you, that we just keep going here with
I
this
love
because I'm
it.
so
I love
excited.
it. Yeah, me
So this
too.
this thing of going to the maximum movement, there's a couple things there. One is we're all trying to please our teachers,
Yes.
the therapist, the person, the
Yes.
doctor, whatever. We're trying to please them. I mean, we never really grow out of that as far as I can tell. We want to grow out of it, but I think the nervous system knows, hey, when there's somebody who's in authority, we should try to please them because authority people have a lot of power over us. So it's difficult to just really own that for yourself. So then it gets really tricky for the therapist, the instructor, the trainer to really be okay with what looks like a snail's pace. What
Mhm.
because because a lot of these setups, there's people everywhere doing all kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
Over there, my gosh, that guy has got that stroke patient already
Mhm.
up and walking, even though the person doesn't know how to move their pelvis at all. And then over there, that person over there, they look like they could return to the soccer field tomorrow. And over here, I'm just saying, hey, let's just stay with breath,
Mhm.
just stay with breath. So the therapist, the teacher has to really be okay with that, what looks like a snail's pace, but as you said, in the end, is
It's
actually faster and is
yeah.
way more comprehensive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the results, people are so thrilled because it not only solves their problem, like maybe they come in for a knee injury, but their overall performance becomes better, becomes easier, they become faster, they start having fun again doing what they're doing, and they start having more fun in their life again, and they start feeling more creative again instead of feeling like I am a hurt knee, you know? I mean, people become the identity of a problem sometimes for a good part of their lives. I have back pain. And that's almost like their nameplate. I have back pain, you know? And so if we can get away from that and go go for the source, go inside the nervous system, because that's where the locks are held, right? Deep inside in those lower parts of the brain, those survival parts. And we have the skills to access those through our work, through things like, if you think about like breath and movements of the eyes, the tongue, the mouth have been with us for millions of years, right? That's deep evolutionary knowledge that we can tap into to help someone tap into their own greatest intelligence, because it's there that their nervous system knows a lot more than me. So how can I tell them when I'm not even inside their body? I don't know their history. All I can do is invite them home within themselves and trust that if I do that, if I bring them the deepest core of themselves to a state that they feel comfortable again, they feel relaxed again, they can sleep again, that from there the intelligence will begin to emerge to solve all of it. So when in the beginning I gave this big list of how can one movement system approach all these things, it's because the nervous system is underneath it all, right? The functioning of the nervous system and the new science of neuroplasticity just gives us lots of basis to show that, and thankfully, the Feldenkrais work that we studied, Dr. Feldenkrais was a pioneer in my mind as a neuroplastician, even, and was practicing science just about 60 years ahead of its time. But he understood everything that we're talking about and gifted us with this understanding, which we are both passionate of now sharing with other populations, which you do so broadly with your Feldenkrais Summit and with your Bones for Life program, and which I'm aiming to do in the areas that relate to my history, since I've been a professional Pilates stereotonic instructor, body worker. And yet these same qualities, these same approaches, these same principles work for absolutely everybody, because we all have those same underlying elements of intelligence in ourselves that we can trust in our nervous system. And I don't know of any other technique that helps people to access that.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, there's it's the quality of presence, right? It's this thing that we've become so enamored with in our culture in terms of following meditation, yoga, Buddhism, or whatever version of meditation, of being present. But there is in the Feldenkrais work a quality of being present within as an instructor, as a teacher, as a guide, as well as for yourself, that's really precious and is the ground from which new things can really emerge. And I think it's such a fundamental education. When I'm talking about Bones for Life, and people say, well, do I need to give up being a Pilates teacher, a yoga teacher, whatever, if once I become a Bones for Life teacher? And I'm like, absolutely not. Or someone will say, well, I practice yoga. Can I still do yoga and do Bones for Life? I'm coming to you because my back hurts, but will I have to stop doing yoga? And I always think, well, I don't know if you'll have to stop it. You might decide some things are not as good for you as other things, right? That'll be your decision to make.
You'll approach it with a new reference.
That's right. You'll have a new reference point, but they're not contradictory, because the somatic education approach is the ground underneath for which all movement emerges. All movement emerges from, because we're really just trying in somatic education to capture the childhood quality of exploration that
Yes.
allows us to be interested without any idea of the outcome, just in the sensation, just in
Mhm.
the pressure, just in the
Mhm.
ability to suddenly lift an arm or to get our pelvis in the air and bounce it on the ground and be thrilled with the feeling of that.
Mhm.
All those things that children do, but
Yes.
we just can't really afford to do them while we're trying to learn all these other things in school and get ourselves established and all that stuff that goes on in order to be able
Mhm.
to fit into this world. So we tend to have that pruned back by the culture. And I'm
Yes.
not sure that it's not necessary. I don't know. But I think that it is a very fundamental beneath the groundwork that if more people could have it as their ground for their field, then we would have so much more successful fields.
Which is why I think you and I are both so passionate about getting it out there.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about why movement is used as the medium, because there are other ways of presence, like you said, like meditation, for example, and and movement is part of life, is the essence of life, right? Without movement, there is no life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think the whole thing starts with defining movement, though, because people are thinking that that means exercise.
yes,
Exercise is part of movement, but movement is way more than exercise. Movement is
yes,
blinking the eye. Movement is
yes,
respiration. Movement is the cells bumping around and sending signals to each other. Movement is the ability to regulate your temperature in your body. Movement is
yes,
emotion.
yes,
So it's absolutely, you can't have life without it. You can put somebody on a respirator or an iron lung to keep them alive, and it will move for them. But if you take it away, they will not be able to survive because they can't move the most basic pieces for themselves. So it's the ground of human being, as far as I can tell. You wouldn't have humans or any kind of organic being without it.
yes. And you mentioned emotion, and I love the way you speak about emotion and the movement of emotion, which you can certainly see in one's face, right? How if someone's happy, someone's sad, it's expressed through the muscles, it's expressed through the breathing, whether we're laughing or we're crying, all of it changes altogether. And so why not use, for example, talk therapy instead to deal with emotions, right? And yet, how many times do you hear people say, "Oh, it I can't find words enough to thank you," you know, because our words are more limited. They come on so much later in our development, whereas movement is far more primal in us. Where like it's very difficult to bring words to a sensation. I mean, we can try, um, but sensation has its own quality that cannot necessarily be defined through words, that we can tap into through movement. And as people go into sensation, then they can become aware of the associations and movement that go with it. Yeah. And yes.
Yes. I think it's I think emotions is a big it's a big piece. It's a big chunk.
Yes.
And um and of course Feldenkrais said, look, we are all of that. We are the physical, we are the emotional, we are the chemical, we are all of it, the spiritual, we're all of
Mhm.
that. It's
Mhm.
all one cohesive being. It can't really be parsed out. But the fields of study and how we address it can be parsed out. So that's so important
Yes.
to realize that we're parsing out the fields of study,
Right.
but that doesn't mean we were successful in parsing out the person. Even though the surgeon goes and operates and replaces the hip joint, they are
Yes.
affecting the whole person. So
Yes.
when we look at emotion, I think that depending on what's going on in one's life and what kind of fertile ground or lack of fertile ground they had as a child for being a healthy human being, they're going to need more than one approach. And somatics somatics, and I don't just mean somatic as it's being added onto therapy. I think that's great that somatics is being added onto psychotherapy. I do. But this piece of somatic education, where a person really learns to regulate themselves in the process of movement, is so vital. And why do I think that's vital? I think it's vital because physical movement is tied directly to survival. So when a person starts to do physical movement and they're being taught to attend at the same time
Mhm.
to what happens when they bump up against a really strong habit, or they bump up against using a part of themselves that they have never used, or they bump up against using a part of themselves that has been hurt very badly. There is an emotional response to that. And if the person came from a really, really challenged background, somatic education will be overwhelming to them without a psychotherapist, a really qualified psychotherapist to be helping them. So it's so,
Yes.
I just want to say how important it is for me to say, I see the value in all these fields, even though I was
Absolutely.
kind of,
And the
I'm
surgeon,
kind of like dishing a little bit on
w-
some of them because
yes,
I
yes.
totally know these fields are very, very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think where we all work best is when we work as teams. Like the more systems with which we approach uh, uh, ourselves. For example, I got into this coming out of a car accident, having been a professional dancer, and was fortunate that the naturopath who worked with me initially changed my diet, sent me to acupuncture, told me to meditate, sent me to an osteopath, sent me to Feldenkrais. He said the more systems you are working with, the faster you're going to get better because they're all related. So I think, yeah, all these professionals are absolutely the physical therapists too, are I mean, we have to be so thankful for all of them. We're just a part of the team, but what we offer is something else that I is something that is more internal within the individual
Yeah,
to
we
own.
do. We do. And I like to see where there were an injury, an illness, a psychological challenge is pretty significant. I like to see it as a triad. I like to see three different people on that team for that person, if possible, because it rounds things out, right? It helps to
Yeah.
fill in the gaps, and the person gets more than enough support then. But there's so little understanding of something like Feldenkrais that oftentimes we can be working at cross purposes by accident. So I know in Cincinnati, it's really difficult for me to find, and I'm sorry to say this for anybody in Cincinnati, if you feel like I should be giving you a try and you're in any of these rehab fields, let me know because I'm always looking for people to refer to. And it's difficult for me to find people to refer to that have had these more significant diagnoses, and they've usually come out of that system pretty disadvantaged. So this is where I just think, Angela, your work where you're really encouraging people who are in these fields to add to their repertoire is so, so important. And the work that I'm doing as training Bones for Life professional, giving CEUs or professional educators, becoming Bones for Life somatic education teachers is also important so that they can not jump their practice. I want them to keep their physical therapy or
They
whatever,
just
but
speak
it will definitely help.
Absolutely, it will. It's almost magical, the power of how it can combine with other practices. Can you speak a little more to us about Bones for Life and what that is?
Yeah, so Bones for Life was created by Ruthie Alon, and she was one of Moshe Feldenkrais's original 13 apprentices, students. And so she was known in the Feldenkrais world for being this incredibly beautiful, flexible mover with this just beautiful, gorgeous eyes and very
Mm.
charismatic. And she noticed that she was going into her 60s, that her posture was not what she thought it should be. She noticed that she was always asking people to work with their shoulder blades. She got her own diagnosis of osteoporosis. She thought, how can this be? I've been doing this work for all this time. I'm an incredible mover. I'm an incredible explorer. How could it be that that's true? And so she really wanted to take Moshe Feldenkrais's principles and his work and develop something that she felt would be more straight arrow towards this uprightness. She felt that Moshe had gone towards the therapeutic. She sometimes hypothesized it was because of that knee injury that he had, that he, that ended up defining so much of his life, because at the time, those knee injuries didn't really have a lot of capacity to be treated successfully surgically. But, as we know, he was able to move with that incredible
Yes.
amount of, this is somebody who really could move despite the fact that his knee shouldn't have been able to allow him to really squat or do other things. He could. So he was able to use it to his advantage for sure, but she felt like maybe Feldenkrais went a little too therapeutic, a little too much time on the floor. That was her idea. So she took a lot of his movement processes, we call lessons in the Feldenkrais work, and she really streamlined them and created her own. And then she also put vertical pressure through almost all of them, really honing in on what she called, wave or axis. Wave being this place where your leg is swinging through the air and there's just a little bit of exchange between the curves, and axis being when you come to stand in mid stance at the front of the heel, and the curves all theoretically should become neutral, a little bit more long, so that you're really stacked on that weight bearing side. So she's just did a beautiful job of taking an unwieldy work. I will say the Feldenkrais work is unwieldy. You can never finish it, right?
Studying the rest of our lives. Yes.
Right. And that's okay. I'm totally in
Love
for
it.
studying the rest of our lives
Yes.
with it. But she thought, look, people need something a little bit more bite-sized. They need
Yes.
things that they can do in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They need something they can learn to memorize and still pay attention to the quality of the movement and the breath and how they're doing it, to learn how they're doing it, to experiment with other ways of doing it. And so she was very successful, I think, in coming up with that program.
I love seeing the videos of her teaching aspects of it. They're inspirational.
Yeah,
And you are
absolutely.
a senior educator of Bones for Life.
Senior trainer. That's correct. I'm a
Yes.
senior trainer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when is your next program coming up?
Well, we actually have a little surprise one coming up very, very quickly. So if people were to contact us, I think you're going to probably put that in the comments. If you don't want me to say it, that's fine.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, bonesforlife.us, bonesforlife.us. We have what starts as immersion one, and people can come to it even if they don't want to become teachers, but
That
definitely,
was my next
yeah,
question. Can
we can
everyday
take,
people
yes,
participate?
absolutely. I would say the majority of people who start out with this at the beginning are doing it for everyday reasons. And then the people who go on to the more advanced study are the ones who are more usually from a professional background of some kind that wants to study deeper.
And is
So
that online or in person, Cynthia, with you?
almost everything is online with us. So yeah,
Oh,
they can do it. We get and we have classes in 4 different time zones, and they're live. We're not interested so much in what people do on replays. I mean, we're glad that people use the replays, but we want to be with people. We keep small group sizes, for example, so that we can really attend to people and help people answer people's questions and walk them along. So yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
it's wonderful. And I will say that I think that signing up for a Feldenkrais training program, first of all, there's not that many around the world anyway. You have to travel a lot to be in person. It's usually going to take 3 to 4 years. It's a very large bite financially and time away from income. So I think anybody who can do it should do it.
Like you said,
Absolutely.
I have a bite-sized piece that's really that they can really utilize in their lives immediately, and it's fun.
Yeah. Bones for Life is definitely something that they can start utilizing right away, and you can train in it as a professional in a much shorter time frame. It's the quality of the students that come out is really high. Yeah. So yes.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. We'll definitely be sending people your way.
Yeah. And we're so excited about the Feldenkrais Awareness Summit, which we actually call it Move Better, Feel Better now, since you were on it. It's called the Move Better, Feel Better Summit, because, nobody knows the word Feldenkrais. So, and this year's theme is Awareness Heals. So we've got Neil Thies, Dr. Neil Thies is going to be our keynote. What a fabulous, interesting person, pathologist, part shaman, part author, part poet, part anyway. He's going to be writing, he's going to be talking about complexity and where that inner world meets the outer world, and it's just
What
going to
I
be
love about your summit is that this valuable work that can help so many people that's hardly been heard of. Yeah, I mean, I tell so many people I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, and they vote, you're what? You've taken that to thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world, and people don't need any experience to come. Everybody's welcome.
That's
And
right.
that is such a gift. I just want to personally say thank you. I don't know what inspired you. I know it was a lot of work, but it has done so much good and opened so many people's eyes. And I'm really grateful to you for doing that.
Thank you, Angela. I'm just really grateful that the world has accepted it so well. And there's been so many surprises that have come out of online teaching. I'm sure you've experienced this as well. That I didn't expect. I never expected online teaching could be of the same quality that it could be with me in the room. And in fact, it can. The qualities are sometimes a little bit different, but we see such great carryover from people who are doing it in their own living rooms. They don't associate it with the space that they're coming to. They associate it with their own living
Or
room.
like you said, or that teacher that they're trying to please, for example.
Right,
It
right.
also has that advantage. Yeah.
It does. And then we also are now seeing, and we have seen from the beginning, but we're really trying to come on board with the last couple of years because we're understanding more that, people with disability are able to come to these classes that have never showed up in my private practice, never showed up in my group classes. I get some people that are disabled, but mostly they stay home. They don't come to classes.
What
They
a
don't, they
gift.
can get in the
What a
building,
gift.
get out of the parking lot,
That's right. That's
get on
right.
the floor.
That's right. I have, for example, taken a participant in my last educational group who is legally blind, and she would try to come see me as a practitioner, and she would inevitably be 40 minutes late because it was so hard for her to get here. And now I just work with her on Zoom out of the comfort of her home, and she doesn't have that stress to
Right.
try and get to and from. Plus, there's the expense of it too, for people to travel, to be away from home, to
Well,
negotiate all of
sometimes they don't
that.
even have, they don't have cars. They're doing
Yeah,
buses.
yeah.
I mean,
So
the
it
challenge
really
is very real.
opens the audience. It
It,
really opens the audience.
and the fear of being seen, we've also seen that the fear of being seen is significant. So we see people that leave their cameras off for weeks and then suddenly their camera is on, and you'll just see maybe their arm waving or their foot waving. And then you see a little more of them the next week. And then you see a little more of them the next week. This is not accidental. This is somebody who's really coming home to themselves and accepting themselves and dropping that fear of judgment. So I'm really happy with what's been happening in the online world of movement for people.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be offering my course, which is Neuroplasticity and Exploration Through Movement, online through Neuroplasticity in Action. And I had originally taught it in person, directed toward Pilates instructors, and people kept saying, "I want more, I want more." And then here we are with the online world, and the evolution of neuroplasticity as a science, and all this valuable information. So I've put together a course where it's in part educational about the science of neuroplasticity, because it's much easier to buy in if you understand the mechanisms and the logic of it. And then I take people into movement explorations, because how can they from the outside in know what I'm talking about? They need to have an experience of it. So we do a number of movement explorations in which they learn through their own experience what it feels like to approach movement in this way. And then I do examples of applications in various environments, such as in a Pilates environment, for teachers to see how it can be applied. And I have people coming in from all walks of life, but Pilates instructors can get 16 CECs. And what I've done now is I've spread it out. So the first time I taught it 2 days back to back. Now it's 5 hours one Saturday, and then there 2 weeks pass, then another Saturday, 2 weeks pass, and then another Saturday. So people can actually assimilate and integrate and experiment with the work, come back with real questions,
That's
and
lovely.
then move forward. And they have unlimited access to the replay, so they can do the things again and again. And so I'm just thrilled about it, and can't wait to do more with it.
Yeah, I just totally agree with you. I'm always looking at what more I can really do with the online medium, and it keeps expanding. So yeah, I'm happy. And if people just want to have an experience, as you said, of the Feldenkrais work, they can show up for the Feldenkrais Summit, and you can go to
Highly
feldenkraissummit.com and
recommended.
get on the wait list. We'd love to have you.
Super. Cynthia, it's such a pleasure to speak with you as always. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for
Thank you,
joining me.
Angela, for inviting me. And I just thrilled for all the things that you're doing.
Thank you, you as well. Take good care.
You too.